Hi, this is Martin Bjerregaard. Welcome to another round of Pine Tribe video interview. Today we have Jack Conte with us from San Francisco. Hi, Jack.
Hello.
And before we start talking, Jack, I just want to share, as always, a little fact about something related to Scandinavia. And this week we actually saw the IPO of a spectacular Danish, originated at least, company called Just Eat that went on the London Stock Exchange for a valuation of $2.5 billion. And I think that's pretty amazing. Most people think it's a British company, but it's actually started here in Denmark by a bunch of Danish entrepreneurs, and actually also the CEO until recently has been a Dane, even though he lived in London. So that's something to be proud of. It's the biggest tech IPO in London in 8 years. So I think it's a kind of a big week for Denmark on that note. And Jack, even though Patreon might not be $2.5 billion worth yet, I think you had an excellent start. And maybe you can tell us a bit about what Patreon is and how you came up with the idea.
Yeah. So Patreon is it's a site that helps content creators make money. That's the whole point of the site is to help people who are putting out digital media on the web, to help them make money from doing that. So right now that process is just extremely broken. Everybody's trying to run ads on and over and before and against their content. And that just isn't working so well. It's leaving a lot of people who are getting hundreds of thousands of views per month, hundreds of thousands of page views, sometimes even millions. It's leaving them with, $100 or sometimes less than, $100 for that media. And Patreon's trying to solve that problem. We're trying to say, okay, how do we fix this? How do we get somebody who's making nothing, and has this massive audience that's tuning in every week to see their new stuff? How do we help that person actually make a meaningful salary from making things?
Yeah. So it's you can either support with $1 or more per month or per production, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're one of the artists yourself, so you scratch your own itch, I imagine, by doing it. How has it been working out for you as a content creator so far?
It's been great. It's been amazing. My fans here. I'll give you the most recent numbers. Patreon.com/Jack Conte. My fans have pledged $4,988 per video that I create. So that means when I release a video, those funds get transferred to me, which is amazing because that's like 100 times what I would make from ad revenue on a video.
And I guess they can unsubscribe again if you produce 3 crappy videos in a row.
You can cancel whenever you want.
Yeah. Do you see that actually? Do you see that if you make one that's not just as good as the other, maybe like the rest of us sometimes experience when we send out a newsletter and we get 100 people to unsubscribe or something like that?
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's an actual thing for creators. So you want to make sure that your audience trusts you and that you're releasing good things to the world. And if you're not, then I think I think we have seen some patrons drop off. It's never very much, maybe 2% maximum. But yeah, we're actually going to be building a series of tools and analytics products to help creators look at those relationships and say, oh, okay, last week I lost 1 patron, but I gained 10. And okay, how do I get that patron back? Or, we're just going to be helping them sort of analyze their business and who's coming in and who's leaving, if there is anybody leaving.
Yeah. It's very impressive. We see a lot of Kickstarter clones, of course, but you've done something different with the model and giving it a new dimension with the recurring revenue. I think that's really inspiring because oftentimes when people see a success, they want to copy it. It rarely works.
Right.
And I'm very close to here in Denmark, very close to Germany, and there's a lot of cloning going on in Germany these days because there were some guys who were successful with it a couple of times, but then it just explodes into clones of everything that comes from the US.
Yeah.
And it rarely works, but you made a small adjustment, a simple adjustment in a way, but that's the brilliance of it, I think.
Thanks.
You look so, at the front page there on patreon.com. I can't help noticing how happy you look. And now also just from talking with you a little while, and I think that two things that people often think, and that one is that if you're an artist, you're kind of a dark person.
Uh-huh.
At least if you are as creative as you are. And the other thing is that if you need to be a successful entrepreneur, you'll be this maniac who only thinks about business and stresses all the time. And you seem to be neither. Can you share a bit about what your thoughts around happiness and is
Sure.
there something that you think about on a daily level, or you're just born like this?
I'm always thinking about happiness. I don't want to paint a picture of myself that's too rosy because I do grind. I work really hard. But the thing is, I like working hard. Um, I feel, at least with happiness, for me, there's two types of happiness. There's the fulfilled kind of happiness it helps me rest at night. When I've put in a good day, I feel fulfilled, and that's the sort of a deep happiness. And then there's just the happiness of doing something that you enjoy in the moment, whether it's playing softball or going for a hike with friends or something like that. But for me, what really keeps me going and what really makes me feel fulfilled is feeling like I'm making a difference and feeling like I'm changing and growing. So for me, that's Patreon is an obvious next step of that. And then in terms of my artistic career, I think, and this is also a funny thing, I've been most happy, and I'm very aware of this. I've been most happy if you plot finances with happiness. It goes like this.
Okay.
So I'm when I have the most money as an artist, you have good years and you have bad years.
Yeah.
And the years where I've had the most money has been when I've been least happy, and the years when I've had the least money is when I've been most happy.
Why
I
do you
don't know
think
why that is. Well, I've thought about it a lot.
What goes wrong when you have a lot of money? Are you using it on the wrong things?
I think it has to do with the artist cycle. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before, if you're familiar with the concept, but the artist cycle is this: you get these spikes as an artist where you release something that's great and it gets a lot of attention and it's very big, and then it comes back down, and then a few months later, or 6 months later, a year later, you release another thing, and then boom, and so you get these spikes in an art. That's called the artist cycle. It's these sort of, or you release an album and you go on tour, and then you're writing your next album, and blah blah blah. Yeah. And I find that I'm most happy in this phase when I'm sort of going up, not at the peak. At the peak, it's crazy and stressful, and I don't feel like I'm growing when I'm at the peak. I like to feel like I'm growing. So I'm happiest when I'm sort of at the bottom of the artist cycle, because I feel like I'm on my way somewhere. I feel like I'm taking a journey.
You're probably more creative at that phase, where you're just more in execution mode, maybe, and being dragged along by the success of it.
That's the other thing, is execution. If I'm not executing, then I'm not happy. I feel like I really enjoy on a deep level making things. I like to make something, and I like to finish things, not because I feel like they're complete, but because I give them up. So at some point, you just say that it's finished, even though it doesn't feel like it's finished. You say it's finished and you give it to the world, and you just give it up. And if I'm not doing that, if I'm not giving things up to the world and saying that they're finished, then I'm also not as happy. So those are the kind of things that I think make me tick and keep me going.
Okay. And what can reduce your happiness, and what goes? Have you tried suddenly coming to a place where you feel you can't do those things? You can't be too creative. You can't execute. You're getting less happy, or has it just
Yeah,
been, and it's also fine enough if it's just been, a continuous and growing adventure for you?
right. I think if I'm not challenging myself, um, if I'm not failing a lot,
Hmm?
um, then that reduces my happiness. Um, if I don't feel like I'm growing as a person, so that would be like going on autopilot. So not trying new things, just doing something that's been successful and just cranking on that. Um, but I like to be doing new things all the time and always changing the way I do old things. And if I kind of get in a rut and just start going on autopilot and kind of sleeping behind the wheel and just cranking out content or site updates or whatever it is that's like the old stuff that I was doing, that puts me in a bad state of mind. Um, the other thing that can be detrimental to my happiness is um, not putting enough care into my relationships with people. So um, if I'm if I'm ignoring my personal relationships or not feeding them and helping them grow, um, that's tremendously hurtful. Yeah,
Mm.
very bad.
And is there a trade-off there? Because if you like to be in the creative phase as an artist,
Hmm.
I could imagine that sometimes your personal relationship suffers when you go into that process of being creative.
They do. Yeah, yeah, they do.
How
So
do you
it
deal
is a
with
trade-off.
that?
Right. Yeah. It's a trade-off, and it requires a lot of thought. I have to put thought behind it. But yeah, fortunately, my my most of my creativity these days is with Pomplamoose, which is my band that happens to be my girlfriend.
Okay.
So so when we're working and making things, we're making things together and spending time together.
Yeah.
So that's really nice, and that's definitely that's a for me that was a way of solving that problem of having to choose between the two. When I was making my own music and focusing on my solo career, which I think are some of the videos that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Um, while I was very happy doing that and it was great, I went on a tour by myself, and it wasn't as fun as going on a tour with Natalie, with my girlfriend.
Uh,
And she had the same experience. She went on a tour by herself and didn't have as much fun as when she tours with me. So we like to be together. So we sort of felt like, okay, maybe it makes more sense to focus our musical careers in an area that allows us to make things together and to be together.
yeah.
Um, so that was a conscious choice. And it was based around the idea of what do we enjoy doing? What's going to make us happy in the long run?
Okay. Is there another side of the coin on that as well, or has it only been a good experience, or maybe sometimes you kind of forget it's your girlfriend and see it as your colleague all the time, or?
Yeah, no, it's very difficult, and we are constantly talking about it, communicating. We have to be very, very communicative with each other. Um, we're always just last night, not even last night, yesterday, we were filming a video that was supposed to be just a fun video of the two of us jamming out to some music. We were covering a Beatles song, 15 seconds to post on Instagram.
Okay.
And we started doing this, and then we thought, okay, well, it's not quite the right take. And then Natalie wanted to do another take, and I didn't want to do another take. And then we started arguing. And then and this was my fault. I just realized that I was pushing her to do something that she didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to get it done. And she confronted me about it, and I got very angry and upset. And then I realized I was just being unreasonable and silly. And but yeah, just being conscious of those moments um, where things go wrong and figuring out how to avoid them and make them better. Excuse me.
Bless
Sorry.
you.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, so figuring out those moments and helping steer the relationship in the right direction and the creativity in the right direction is very difficult and requires a lot of talking and a lot of communication and a lot of feedback.
Yeah. And it seems like you have those two big roles in your life, of course, apart from being a boyfriend and all those human roles as well. But you have
Right.
in your career you have two big roles. One is to be an entrepreneur, and you're even the CEO, aren't you, of
Yeah.
Patreon,
Hmm.
and then an artist slash content creator. Do you feel perfect synergy between those two, or do you sometimes feel that it can be difficult to combine, or there's a trade-off there?
Oh, it's definitely a trade-off. Because being an artist is a double-time job. I mean, it's not a full-time job. It's two jobs. You have to make things and you have to connect with your audience. And each one of those is a full-time job. And then being an entrepreneur is also a double-time job.
Yeah.
So, I'm working four jobs right now, and it feels like it. I mean, I'm
Okay.
exhausted. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm absolutely exhausted. I don't have any days off. I work 7 days a week, which I know is uh, not advised, but again, it's what I like. It's what I like doing. I wouldn't be doing it like this if it wasn't making me feel fulfilled. Um, so so yeah, it's just a ton of time and energy. But everything, my calendar is totally blocked out, and I schedule in free time. I'll schedule in um, 2 hours to write a song with Natalie, or I'll schedule dinner into the calendar. Just
How?
I'm very careful to like plot in meal times, and everything has to be scheduled now because it's just booked up weeks in advance. So I'm very careful about scheduling enough time to take a breath and feel okay and eat food.
There goes the
Yeah.
picture of a free artist.
What's that?
There goes the picture of a free artist. A true
Yeah.
rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have some kind of plan for a dream of in 5 years time you will have more time for yourself,
Um,
or you feel you're in the perfect spot so you don't really want to change anything?
maybe, well, it's not quite perfect. I think if I had one day a week where I wasn't allowed to book anything,
Yeah.
where I could just wake up in the morning and not know what I was going to do.
Mm.
If I had one day like that, or even half a day, I think that would be ideal. And then the rest of the time, I'd like to be cranking on Patreon and on my own personal, you know, Pomplamoose and my own content as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that would be ideal. So maybe it's not so different from now, just a little bit more sustainable.
Yeah.
Um,
You
yeah, right.
can't.
I mean,
And why are
right
you
now
not
we're
having that now? Is it you can't, you feel you can't afford it, or you can't keep up with the inbox, or is there something
yeah, I can't.
like
So I
that?
have 5 hours of email time booked every day, and often that gets taken over with meetings. So I get very behind on email, which is stressful. I don't like being behind on email.
Hmm.
So so yeah, we're setting up the business so that it's more sustainable right now. That just takes some time to set all those things. So right now we're only 6 employees. There's only 6 people working at Patreon. We should be well over 10. We don't have anyone doing admin, for instance. I'm doing all my own admin work, which is just a ton of time and energy, and it's a waste of time for me. I can't. It's causing me to get behind on things. And so having that help would be great. So we're hiring someone to help with admin for the office, an office manager. And as we hire more and more people to help take over components of the business, then we'll all be a little bit more focused on what's important to us. That just takes time. Hiring a company full of people to have their own job and to do what's needed. Wow, that's really hard. Hiring is so hard and takes so much time.
Yeah.
So that's just going to be a little while before we're all set up. But yeah, I feel like once we get that ball rolling, it'll be a little bit more sustainable. Right now, it's kind of crazy. We're putting out fires, and it's a lot of work.
How do you manage to be creative? And can you actually schedule 3-4 hours to make to work on your music video?
Yeah. So the
Um,
way I do it is I schedule 3 days at a time.
okay.
So I'll be at Patreon Monday through Thursday or Friday, and then I schedule Friday, Saturday, Sunday to do a new video or to record a new song. And so I go back to the studio and I'm just in a totally different headspace, right? I'm in a different place physically and I'm in a different headspace. I can totally focus on being creative. And that's really, I need that time. I need that time to get into the zone of songwriting again or video making again.
Do you have some rules then? Something like not check emails in the morning, or leave your
Yeah.
smartphone at home, or do you have some rules or for those
Um,
days?
no written rules, but I do check email less on those days. I don't spend 5 hours a day checking my email when I'm making a new video or creating a new song. Um, I generally don't, well, yeah, I don't schedule meetings or anything during those days. I keep them very clear. Um, and I make sure that I respect that time too. That's the hardest part, is that I respect that time. Because
Mm,
if I don't respect it, then other people won't respect it.
no,
So,
start
so
booking meetings and
yeah,
pulling you back in the office.
exactly. If I start booking one or two phone calls and then it shows up on the calendar, then it's like, oh, okay, well, we can schedule some other things. And so I have a clear rule about not booking anything on those days. I have to respect that time.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
something because I work with authors, right? And I've written a book myself, and I'm supposed to write blog texts and articles around my thinking and all that. And the same goes for my colleagues who are authors and bloggers. And I think it's really a general problem that people that are busy with also doing talks or running a company or doing a
Yep.
consultancy. It's so difficult for them to be creative. So I'm very
Yeah.
curious to hear, because you succeed with this in a big way, right? With almost 8 million views on YouTube and one of your popular videos and all that, and all your music that's ready there, and you produce so much. So you're really a role model for us on that.
Well, thank you.
So that's I think we need all the tips we can get, because it just seems like to be two completely different part of the brain, and
Yeah.
to be efficient and dealing with a lot of people, answering a lot of email, and then also to be very creative and big picture minded, or whatever it is that you're doing as
Yeah.
an artist.
Yeah. It's actually been, honestly, I think it's helped my creativity to be working on Patreon.
Okay.
Because if I'm thinking about being creative all the time, if that's all I think about, um, then I think I tend to get in a rut. I can't, um, you know, I'll be so focused on being creative that I'll take 3 weeks to make a video instead of taking 4 days to make a video,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'll overthink things and I'll over process things. Whereas with Patreon, I don't have time to overthink things. I
No.
just got, like, when I go home for the weekend, I got to deliver a video Sunday night. I've got to have a finished, edited, done video.
Yeah.
And that forces me to execute. So because there's deadlines, I do well with deadlines. I really do well with deadlines.
Yeah.
Not everybody does. So knowing how you work well is important. And I know that I work well on a deadline, so I set deadlines for myself. And that helps me, like, not only be more creative because I'm forced to be creative, but yeah, I do great when I book time on the calendar for myself to make a video. If I know I have 3 days to make a video, I'm gonna make a video.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know a lot of other artists. Do some of them say to you that that they can't force creativity like that, or do you think that's a unique skill you have, or is that
Um,
also the way other great artists works?
well, I don't know. Yeah, I know some people who also do well on deadlines, but for me, I think it has to do with you know, you I've heard that creativity happens kind of at the intersection of two different um, planes. So, for instance, um, I forgot this exact example, but I'll try and estimate what it was.
Yeah.
There was an auto manufacturer who was trying to figure out some material to use on a car window or something that would keep the rain from splotching but not mess up the internal mechanisms or erode some of the mechanics inside the car. And they couldn't figure out the material, and they had everybody in the company, everybody in this auto manufacturing company, work on this problem because it was a serious problem. And at the end of the day, they weren't able to figure out what to use. They couldn't figure out the right combination of chemicals, and they couldn't figure out a solution to the problem. And then, and again, I'm butchering this story, so I'm just kind of making this up. But something like this happened.
Yeah.
They ended up, I think one of the guys who worked at the company ended up telling his friend about the problem, who like worked at a laundromat or something like that, or some other type of business, just a completely different type of business. And this friend said, "Oh, you should use this because this kind of material works great with those kind of materials, and it won't erode this. And it's actually," and they brought that solution back to the company, and sure enough, it worked, and it was amazing. Coming from a guy who worked at a laundromat.
Yeah.
The point of that is that if everybody is thinking about car manufacturing and is in the space of auto and cars and motors and electronics, you're just in a whole world, and everything you see and everything you can think of is contained in that world. So it doesn't allow you to access ideas that are outside of that world. Versus the guy in the laundromat is thinking about this problem that's inside this world, but his whole world is laundry and all that kind of stuff. So he's able to arrive at the intersection of these two worlds, and that's where creativity happens. So I feel like the nice thing about Patreon for me is I'm thinking, like, all week I'm here. I'm in this world of entrepreneur and email and web product and operations and users, and I'm like in that world. And then on Saturday I go into music world, and I feel like the reason I'm able to be creative is because part of my brain is still in this world. So when I think of ideas, they're ideas that you wouldn't normally think about, because it really is the intersection of those two different worlds. Yeah. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but it's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah. So you see a good synergy there,
yeah.
More than a compromise.
Yeah.
How do you recharge, Jack? Because it seems like working 4 jobs and being able to do all those things. Do you meditate? Do you work out? Do you suddenly just sleep 12 hours in a row? Or what do you do?
I make sure I get enough sleep every night. I'm not one of those people who only sleeps 5 or 6 hours. I have to sleep 8 hours a night.
Yeah.
And if I don't, then I'm just dead the next day. Like if I sleep 6 hours in one night, I'm non-functional. Okay. So I have to sleep my full 8 hours every night, and I make sure that I do that all the time. And then on weekends, I'll go for a run or hang out, or and sometimes weeknights. Natalie and I, my girlfriend and I, every night at 10 or 11, we watch a couple episodes of some TV show and have ice cream together and hang out and just have a nice time or something like that. So there's time scheduled every day to refocus and recharge.
Yeah. Okay. And what's been the most difficult experience creating Patreon, or the least most difficult one you want to share?
Perhaps I think it's the I would say it's the emotional struggle of getting feedback from our users that is true and correct. So they'll point out a problem in the site, and I agree with them. I say, yes, that's a problem. And yet there are other things at Patreon that are simply a priority. And so we're not able to get to those issues.
Yeah.
And it's not that that person isn't right, and it's not that they don't have a valid point. It's just that there are other things that are really, really important right now.
Yeah.
Like this person will say, "Oh, in the Patreon manager, this button is here instead of here," and that makes it really difficult for me to like go up and click, and I have to click twice when I really should just be clicking once.
Yeah.
And I'll see that and I'll go, "Yes, that's a real problem." But compared with this other problem of, say, PayPal the other day shut us down, and they said
I tried that as well. They're so difficult to work with.
Well, we've had some good luck with them since then. They've been very responsive.
Okay, that's good.
But for a week, we had to focus on that. We had to focus on, because otherwise, it's $300,000 that's not going to go out to creators this month, right? So we can either focus on moving this button and changing it from 2 clicks to 1 click, or on getting all of our creators paid who need to be paid.
Yeah.
And more often than not, or rather all the time, we always focus on the more important issue at hand, which makes it very frustrating for me because there are all these little things about the site that I know could be better and should be better, and we don't have the bandwidth now. That's part of the reason we want to raise some more money, is so that we can hire more people and actually increase our product flow a little bit. But yeah, that's been like an emotionally frustrating situation for me.
To have to prioritize, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
To
that
have
people don't
to,
understand that you need to prioritize, or both?
it's both having
Okay.
to prioritize and having to explain people that we need to prioritize. Both of those things have been difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. And time's up. I really enjoyed it. I hope it was, also okay for you.
It's great. Yeah, thank you
And
for
that
the
we got to
question.
talk about some stuff that some people will care about. I don't think we'll get to those 8 million views that your last video had, but I think less will do. And as this is the internet, it can be out there for a long time. So if one of us does something spectacular anytime in the future, it might be even, it might be picked up at that time.
Perfect.
Thanks so much, Jack,
Great.
and
Thank you,
have a
Martin.
lovely
Thanks.
day in San Francisco.
Okay, I will. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.